I made it through that conversation. She walks away, and my husband, Arlen, goes, she doesn't realize that book just saved her life. She has no idea that book, right? Because I was able to just stop. I see where you are. I'm going to stay here. I hear the first piece, but those deeper pieces are anxiety, fear, not feeling adequate. I'm not going to match that with anxiety and fear and making you feel inadequate. So I think, at the end of the day, part of the beauty of the science is to own and say we all have those things. Unconscious bias, we have those things. And this book is a playbook on it's not about having those things and carrying guilt about that. It's we have those things. And I'm learning with this material that I get to make a choice about what comes after the comma of those interactions. And that is power and empowering, and it's really peace at the end of the day.
Welcome to Therapist Uncensored. Building on decades of professional experience, this podcast tackles neurobiology, modern attachment, and more in an honest way that's helpful in healing humans. Your session begins now with Dr. Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a very special episode of Therapist Uncensored. This is a podcast that was recorded live and was originally released to our NeuroNerd patrons, which is a private community, and now we are delighted to release it to the public. In this episode, we cover some great relational sciences, but we also bring you an incredible guest. Her name is Pam Benson Owens. She is CEO of Six Square, which represents Austin's Black Cultural Arts District, and she teaches DEI to corporations across the United States and is just in general an amazing human, as you will see. Now, one of the things that we're particularly excited about with our association with Pam is she's a professional, but she's not in the mental health field. And she stumbled upon the work in the relational sciences and just does a fantastic job of translating what she's learned into real life, into how this actually applies for regular people. So we hope this inspires many, many, many people inside and outside of the mental health world. The other thing is she's mentioning, we just pick right up and she's talking about the book. So for those of you who don't follow the podcast regularly, the book she's talking about is Secure Relating, Holding Your Own in an Insecure World. And that you can find that at securerelatingbook.com. It's gotten great critical reviews, and it's really a one-stop shopping. Will bring you up to date in all of about attachment, real attachment, what attachment actually means, and how to apply it in your everyday life with a new model. So securerelatingbook.com. Thanks for listening.
We've got another learning opportunity we want to share with you. The International Experiential Dynamic Therapy Conference is coming up this November 13th through the 15th in San Diego, California. So you may have heard the episode 246 where we dove in about what experiential dynamic therapy is with Margaret Martin and Deb Polak. Great conversation. And after which, Sue and I decided to jump in and attend the conference ourselves. So the conference features some of the world's foremost instructors in experiential dynamic therapy. Methods for awakening conscious and unconscious therapeutic alliances are going to be woven throughout many of the presentations, and just a lot of array of topics covered, including working with preverbal trauma, OCD, helplessness, attachment defenses that can block us from deeper connections and security that we're looking for. So come join us if you can. Again, it's in San Diego, November 13th through the 15th. That's the International Experiential Dynamic Therapy Association Conference. You can go to the show notes. You'll find a link there, or go to therapistuncensored/events and find it there. We hope to see you there, and we hope to maybe have a listeners meetup while we are.
Okay, it is my delight to bring you Pam Benson Owens, myself, Sue Marriott, and my wife and co-host and life partner, Dr. Ann Kelly.
Hey everyone, welcome to Therapist Uncensored. Welcome back. I'm Ann Kelly.
And I'm Sue Marriott. And first, I want to set the stage for you as you're listening. We are recording a different kind of podcast today. It's in Austin, Texas, and I'm sitting in front of a beautiful group of folks from Austin who are sitting in couches and sitting on the floor and in chairs, and they're drinking their wine or their water and their cheese, and that's kind of the vibe that you're listening in on. Actually, do you guys want to say hi? We all just go like, woo! That's awesome. The next thing is that we are so incredibly honored and pleased to have Pam with us. I cannot tell you, it just gives me goosebumps practically. So I would like to pass it on to you.
Thank you. You're saying that after already some courageous conversations. I love that.
Yeah, we've had some courageous conversations.
We've had some courageous conversations. What a beautiful energy already in this space. I see a sign up here that says where science meets the soul. I think that's going to be a great backdrop to what we're talking about tonight. So I feel compelled to say that the way to enter into this space is I was minding my own business when. I was minding my own business when a trusted friend called me, and we have such a relationship that she can say just a couple words to me, and I'm like, I'm in. She's like, well, I didn't tell you all. I'm like, I'm in. And next thing you know, I find myself in front of two incredibly brilliant, insightful, compassionate, empathetic women that I really didn't know from dirt. And by the end of that exchange, as we're preparing for a different project, that friend says, well, such and such, the book. And I go, oh. And so before I left that space, I had already ordered the book, and the book appeared on my doorstep at 4 a.m. And so went a transformation in a very short amount of time. And so when I got the chance to then get to meet them and learn about who they are, and I read a book that absolutely fundamentally changed the way I operate in all my different identities as a partner, as a leader and activist, as a parent, I thought, this is absolutely the glossary of terms that I've been looking for to describe the way in which I want to operate and navigate life. So we've had an opportunity to talk about those things. In very short amount of time, I was talking about attachment styles. I'm, wielding all these words into a community and saying, have you read this? Have you read this? Have you read this? Because the connection point for me was so powerful and life-changing. And so the fact that I was minding my own business when, and now I'm getting to sit in a space, I am always mystified how I end up in rooms. How did I even get to this room with just simply sharing some authentic pieces around my lived experience and the nuance of being a Black female on this planet and putting my feet down every day in a world that doesn't often understand me, systematically devalues me. And this book has been the opportunity to say, what does it look like to put down surviving and pick up thriving in a way that doesn't do harm to other people? So I geeked out. I'm a book nerd. Anybody that knows me knows I read several books a week. I read it very quickly. I've read it now 4 times. I've listened to it 5 times on audio. My kids do a quick turnaround in the kitchen. She's on that book again. We're out of here. Because every time I listen to it, I can apply something else. So I think in order to ground the conversation, it's important to lean into the neuroscience and the brain science, which I geek out on. I think people can dismiss it, but it gives you such a grounding to why we are the way we are, how we show up, and why. It dismisses shame, blame, and guilt immediately when you lean in on what that looks like in the brain. So I'm hoping that you two can level set us with a science snapshot of what's in the book.
And we did not put her up to this. I just feel so self-conscious about but thank you so much. It's incredible. But I love you, okay, here's the buy-in. We'll share some science, and then we're going to have a conversation about how to apply it, and hopefully everybody will leave here inspired and a little more secure.
When Pam describes using it in different areas of her life, she talked about as an activist, she talked about as a parent, she talked about as a partner. We can relate to all of those experiences, but it's using the science to help us engage in those areas. And why does it show up in those areas? Why do we need the science in those areas more than some others? We want to unpack that today, because in all of those areas, we get our sense of connection, a feeling of belonging, and a sense of our own personal identity, if you stop to think about it as a parent, as a partner, as a friend, as an advocate standing up in a community for what you deeply believe. So it makes sense that what happens is we need to protect that part of ourselves because it's so important. And when we're born in this world, right, we are here knowing that we need that. And we know it on a cellular level, even though our brain doesn't know it, right? Our society doesn't promote that, right? Individuation, do it yourself. If you need help, you're weak. If you have too many emotions, cut them down. We have a lot of societal messages that say cut off. But our body is very different because our body is smarter, and our body knows that we do not either survive or thrive, and especially thrive, without a sense of connection and belonging. So it makes complete sense that when we feel our most important relationships and our most important parts of our identity threatened, that then we are going to feel a sense of self-protection and activation.
And there's predictable ways that we activate. So we're going to try to do a little bit of neuroscience here in a contained way, although Pam is don't go fast, this is important. So I'm channeling you here, Pam. But the gist of it is, the nugget, I think, to know in real life about relational neuroscience is that the two neural systems that are active the minute we're born, there's two. One is to protect ourselves, and that's, the amygdala. Everybody's heard of the amygdala, that will fire and let the parent know when we are distressed. Now, there's no way to turn that off without higher functioning other mind and brain. And then there's also that yearning, the baby looking at you, the baby mimicking you, wanting belonging and connection. Both of those things are alive and well when we're born. The problem is, one is a little stronger or older, or however you want to say it from an evolutionary standpoint. The amygdala has to be happy. The amygdala has to have assessed on there's basically a little sonar system. We talk about neural Wi-Fi. There's a sonar system at all times saying, am I safe? So if you watch a child, and if they're holding back, they're not thinking, I don't feel safe. That's not how it goes. It's just that there's a perception at an unconscious level of something's not quite right yet. I need to warm up, or whatever it is that I need to do. And then, again, notice that word even. Warming up means my lower mind is signaling it's okay for my connection system to come on. And once that happens, all the best of us comes out. We're more generous. We're less prejudiced. We can tolerate difference. We can be flexible in our responses. That is the best of humanity. But what has to happen is that lower limbic stress response system needs to have perceived some level of safety. And so in our community, when we're getting climate and political division and these chronic things, we can then begin to just armor up and not know it.
And what's different is that we have universal things, obviously, that make us feel threatened. But we also have our in particular ways that we were raised. And a lot of people have heard about attachment. Probably most people in this room have heard the word 10 million, I don't know how many TikToks there are now, right? But often, even in our training, as Tracy alluded to, we were really focused on mother-child. And this is what makes you feel safe, and this is what makes you feel threatened. So as mothers, that feels really great, doesn't it? All your problems go back there. And the deeper and deeper you go into this research, which is why we felt very, very passionate about writing this book, that's just part of the story. It is really important in your early relationships. It does set a groundwork. But the truth is, your wiring was already pre-programmed before you were born. So your wiring, we have learned more and more about epigenetics, about history, how our culture and our history, both in our culture, both in our personal history, is seeped in our DNA. What gets activated, what doesn't. So we actually come pre-baked on some level, on this unconscious level. Lots of research about that, super, super exciting. But the thing that's hard about that is that it's so seeped into who we are in our default system, and then it is also impacted by early, and also it continues to be activated throughout our lives, and we grow into understanding. The point of this is what makes us personally feel threatened is different than what the next person, because of our personal experience. However, we think, because it's our training and our belief and seeped in, what our body feels threatened means everybody should feel threatened and everybody should pay attention, but that's not actually the case.
Right. Like entitlement gets me, but it doesn't get other people.
Yeah. You probably can think about things that go, this triggers me, but it doesn't trigger anybody else. It's shocking how much the core of that creates conflict in your life, because we have these assumptions that it's true. But it also, if you were seeped into one culture, we used to be in pods way back when. We talk about the cave bear and the caveman individual, right? Like, we used to be in pods. So when we got seeped into a certain culture, that felt normal, and we weren't threatened by that because it was all around us. But as we are growing as a community and as a world, thankfully, we are more integrated and we are more alive, and we are faced with differences that are going to make us feel threat. Our default mode is based in our body about what feels normal, and it's an autopilot. And then when something comes up and it doesn't fit our autopilot, it's a glitch, and our body activates. And if we don't recognize that, if we don't take the time to know, as Pam was saying, the science and why we get activated, and to take the challenge that we should be activated, that's a healthy thing, is what we do with it is what's important.
That's right. So my little example of the entitlement, part of how that goes back is that is something that I didn't have enough of. Just in my personal history, it's part of what ended up kind of coding in my body was, you're not supposed to be needy. You're not supposed to want things. If you do want things, you don't say it.
If you show it.
If you show it, right, it's gross, whatever those things are. And I think what we're trying to say is everybody has a personal map. Everybody has things that lit up our parents, and so we do more of that. And then we have things that ended up causing push away, rejection. Sometimes just doing this can cause push away and rejection. And so then what we do is we quickly assess, don't show that you need anything, just kind of chill out, play with your toys. I'm cool, I don't need anything. Now I have more access to my parent. So we're not going to heavy hit on the whole attachment piece, except to say just that one part, which is that from the science, 70 years of science, there's big evidence for this. This is not Sue and Ann's idea or therapist's idea, that we are deeply impacted by this early learning that gets embedded in our nervous system, as what Ann was saying, is what's threatening and what's not threatening. So common examples are like,
yeah,
we need to talk.
Oh, yeah. How many of you, when you hear those words, if you feel, oh my God, I'm out of this room.
Right, whereas somebody else will be like, thank God,
thankfully,
finally.
I've been waiting all day long. Or you have a fight with somebody you love. And some of us all day long are preoccupied in thinking about every detail and saying, did they text? Are they going to say? And the other person is not even in their body. They come back and are you still thinking about that? Are you kidding? But the truth of the matter is that difference is not just personality. We make it up. We say, oh, you don't love me because you're not texting me. We make these presumptions based on our internal experience about what that means. So we're going to do a little quick worksheet. For those of you that worksheet, we're going to make this as quickly as possible, because you will not be able to listen to this conversation, especially with Pam, if we don't talk about the colors. Because Pam's good at the color. Oh, seriously.
She'll start talking colors on you real quick.
If you don't know the colors, you're going to, what the heck are y'all talking about?
So just very briefly, Basically, this isn't just if you get excited or if you get mad. It's more if your attachment system is activated. So if you're in the green is the middle, you're in your secure zone. That's what I was talking about earlier. You feel safe enough. That's a place of power. That is not nice. It's not only nice. It's a place of flexibility, warmth, all those things. We'll talk more about that. As that neuroception of threat begin to feel a little nervous, a little scared, there's 2 ways I can go. So I can go up and where I'm like very focused. Why hasn't she texted? She's late. No. We should talk about this right now. Well, I'm hoping that this is feeling familiar to some of you.
And we do this, we all do all of these. Right. So the top arrow that you see, we think of it as a state, is that we all go into these states of self-protection. And when we go red, the way that we take in information, the way we engage with people is all different. Our brain science changes when we go up and go to the red, as Sue's talking about, where we get preoccupied. That's why we're preoccupied. There's different parts of our mind lit up that takes in a lot more information.
So if you think about like if Jaws music is playing in the background, a little ripple in the water gets interpreted differently. We startle or something versus when, again, we're in the green zone, the same ripple isn't going to even show up on our radar. So it changes when we're activated. It changes how we take in information. And when we're on the red, let's just be quick here, I guess. When we're on the red, we're very focused on the other. It's very highly interpersonal related. We're very focused on what the other person is doing.
And very at charge of possibly losing touch with that person.
That's right. Disconnection, abandonment.
It comes back to that threat. And then going down to the blue, so that we can just sort of cover that. When we go into the blue, what happens is we slide away from our connected relational place, but we have learned through our experience that being overconnected, et cetera, is too dangerous.
Oh, you said overconnected.
Oh, gosh.
See, but she was channeling blue, right?
Yeah,
Being connected feels like it's too much. Or
it's true. So as we travel down to the blue, we see relationships as too threatening, intimacy is a little threatening. So we have these well-worn ways for cutting that off. It may be withdrawing. Has anybody in here there? So some of us just do this.
Just be rational. Just be rational.
Yeah, some of us is like, would you just quit being so emotional? Have you heard people communicate to you like, you're just not very emotional, or you kind of withdraw. I can't ever find where you are. That kind of feedback. It means you've disconnected from that part of your connection system and you don't know it.
Which is by design. And again, same thing about the information processing. When we're in that state where we're zipped up, we're withdrawn, we're pulled away, again, everybody does everything, it also changes our perception. We don't notice small, subtle interpersonal cues. We don't give them. In the book, we talk about sunglasses. Just real quickly, the blue is like aviator sunglasses. I'm not giving away a lot. I'm harder to read when I'm over here, and I'm also not picking up a whole lot. Like I'm blocked. There's a lot of information not coming in. And one of the problems is, so Ann and I, by the way, and our partners, we're married. We've been married for some time now, and that we can do a podcast and work together and do kinds of stuff like this together is frigging amazing.
And we know the red and the blue really
exactly.
well.
Exactly. So we
we're not we don't sit there and live in. Nobody lives in the green. Don't ever think that it's
a North Star.
It's not a destination. It's a process. That's a really important point.
Paddle.
We paddle.
All right. So I think we've got a good. That's what you wanted us to kind of give everybody the science, give everybody the colors. Now, what about you? What are you thinking right now? How has this impacted you? And how can we share the best of this with this beautiful group in front of us?
Well, I don't think there's ever enough time to do that part. I'm just going to say that. Could listen all night to that. But I think the opportunity in this space is to think about what that looks like and sounds like in regular day life. So I was saying to them a couple weeks ago that when I have my activist hat on, which is quite often, I sit at the intersection of like righteous anger and hope. Like that's where I sit most of the time. And with the application of the thoughts around red and green and blue, I've recognized and can acknowledge when I'm slipping into one of those areas. And instead of being afraid of it, leaning into it and being really cognizant of like, heading to the red zone, I feel like I'm sliding into the red, and not feeling guilt around that, but just being more radically self-aware that that's happening. And so for me, in everyday life, I am often confronted with not feeling safe. Just in the frame that I'm in and the packaging I'm in, safety is something that is often disrupted very quickly in my day. Once I've left my home, I'm pretty much not in the safe zone.
Yeah, and talking about attachment security, that can look really different based on culture. And, when you're in this river of American education about what security looks like, it looks like one thing and we believe it and we think that's right. But for you have a different experience of like what security might look like that could be misinterpreted by somebody who's in that river who thinks that they know this is how it should look.
Yeah, why does Pam walk around not feeling safe? It must be her mother, right?
Well, I mean, that is part of it.
Right?
Let me just be honest.
Okay, we're not going to go there
Not
yet.
all of it.
But
Not all of
we
it.
haven't gotten there yet.
There is a smidge of problem there. But the bigger piece to me is when you think about, since we've been doing this, I'm like, okay, y'all, I'm striving for the green zone. I like it here. Like when that happens, it's such a beautiful moment. And just to be really cognizant of that. But one of the things that's come up a lot as I've read the book a couple times is what does it look like? Like I walk into rooms and often think to myself when I assess who's not in the room with me, I sometimes feel like I have to say, I come in peace, just automatically. Like I'm good. We're going to be fine today. And then depending on where they're sitting in the space, I then am not only regulating myself, where like an infraction might happen. Like I often walk into rooms and oftentimes people are like, could you get me a cup of coffee, not realizing I'm the speaker? That happens a couple times a week, pretty often. Like, where's the speaker? Is she coming? Or are you here? I get mistaken a lot. And so the dysregulation that happens, like I was minding my business. I had my latte. And here you come. And so then I'm now managing my own, trying to regulate myself and try to create a space for them to be regulated so that harm doesn't come or an infraction or a disconnection off the bat. So when you think about the material, like I've just become so aware of how that plays out. We've talked about security and just driving down the street, and I was talking about, being in the car with my husband and getting pulled over and the police officer saying, where'd you get this car? Are you in the right neighborhood? Or you're in a suit. You're either a preacher or a drug dealer. And watching my husband, 6'4", try to regulating
the officer's safety.
Right.
For safety. Right, and protectionism. And so that playbook becomes coping mechanisms around like, how do I live and breathe and function in the world? And almost this, I've kind of gotten to a stubborn refusal to be high red all the time. I could be every day. I could be in pull my earrings off and whoop your
soul
every
rage,
day.
Soul rage.
Every day. But the conscious decision to be like, okay, what does that look and sound like for me? I don't want to be in that stage. Like sometimes it's absolutely justified. There's righteous anger, absolutely, as a tool to get something done. But I don't want to sit in high red every day. And so what does that look like for me to create this idea of safety in the space? And sometimes for me, it requires that I anchor somebody else's safety first so that I can be safe. We could talk about whose responsibility that is. That's a waste of time for me. We're in a really challenging world right now. Things are polarizing. I don't have time to figure out whose responsibility is what. I sit in a space of what does co-creation of community look like. And so that might mean that I need to come into the middle to figure out how to create that safety.
Right. Co-creation is a really important word. And the reason we hand you those visuals is that we use them to visualize in our own mind sometimes where we are, because it's the awareness is the hardest thing, right? I mean, we know when we're in righteous rage that we can be aware of that, but when we're still often focusing out there, I'm in reasonable, like she is in righteous rage for an important reason. But then what she's doing is the hard work And she could be accused at times of, if you're not raising your fist in righteous rage, then you're weak and giving in and you're not holding yourself. And yet it is a much harder job to go, wait, I need to come back and I need to hold and I need to be able to engage. And I want to get on the other side of that equation. Like, I was talking about this seeped in, and I was raised in I love the expression I learned recently, in a racist family. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still going back and going, oh my God, did we really say that? Or I'm watching programs with our daughter and going, oh my God, right? Have y'all had that experience? You go back and you watch something, oh, you can't believe that's what's been seeped in your body? But we don't recognize that. So it is easy for any one of us in our history, if we're not aware of the distance that we're making, the difficulty to make that presumption and not even know it. And so if Pam doesn't come and say, you know what, right? And it's not up to her always to do it, but like my openness, and that's part of when we say this is hard work, and our book is not a self-help book, it's a call to action. It is a call into self. I need to know what my biases are. I need to know what activates me and pisses me off and what distances me. And with Pam, it could be fear. I don't want to do something wrong. I don't want to say something to hurt her feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've been working together, and I have to realize, God, sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to show my bias. Does anybody ever feel that when they're like, oh my God, I'm going to just call myself out, and it's scary. And so it's really easy then to not say anything. But then I'm not learning. I'm not going, Pam, how is that for you? Or if I say something wrong and she doesn't tell me, then I just go along my weary way, and I've actually really sent her body into action.
Well, and then not saying something is the blue. That's an example of being activated and withdrawing. And so part of what we want to really focus on too is like these techniques and strategies about how do you keep dog paddling back to the green when we can. And part of that is recognizing how much blue is out there that is also activating us and making fun of feelings and scorning emotion. And, that's not rational. That's not those kinds of things. This left brain rejection of, again, remember that early part where that we're born in yearning and we're born in connection. And the thing that upsets us, why we get scared, is of the loss of connection. So one other piece of that is sometimes what we do is, in order to save our heart, it costs our soul or our spirit. Our argument would be, it's better to be heartbroken than to have your spirit broken or hurt. So I think part of our message is staying engaged, that one of the goals would be, if you can imagine whoever your person is that you're thinking of, that is the uncle at the Thanksgiving that's coming up, or the person who will say the thing that just makes you cringe, or the person you feel like you can't talk to, the partner, that the idea is to work on these things to get that strong, bold, green, grounded self, where that you're not trying to get them to feel a certain thing or get them to be a certain way, but you are in your secure self, and that you're able to navigate from that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say, too, I gave up a long time ago, and it was a liberating moment to step into spaces to change people or convince people. So in that vein, when you think about being in the secure space, and I'm able to have a conversation with anybody, and I engage all the time in conversations with people that we're not going to necessarily agree, and can hold that space, because I'm not trying to convince you or change you. But when you think about the opportunity, to Anne's point about, when you kind of learn things and you become awareness, your revolution and your awareness can also become something that creates a challenge for somebody else. So in the space, especially the last couple of years, as we've become in the space and awareness about cultural norms and ethnic differences and all those things, and DEI work that I participate in a lot. One of the things that's been interesting is that as my dominant class, as I call it, citizens become more aware, they're reading books. They're listening to podcasts, they've watched the movies, and there's an energy around, I got it now, I got it. An over-indexing of that, right? An over-indexing of your allyship can actually cause harm to somebody in the space. And so I've had friends who are like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that happened. And so then we're sitting in a room and we're in a professional meeting, and somebody notices that I've been interrupted, and they're like, wait a minute, you've interrupted Pam. I'm like, girl, stop. Stop. Don't help me on that one. That's going to actually be career shortening and create more harm for me over here. Love your energy. Dial it back. Check your attachment style now. Girl, where are you on the grid? Right? And so that becomes an opportunity too, that you don't want to be in the space where you learn something, right? Like something's been unlocked for you and you misapply it because you want everybody to know it and come along with you, versus let me hold space for there to be a curiosity around what I've discovered, and let me give people an opportunity to come into that space at their own pace.
I love that. And what you're saying is, let me leave space. Can we just sit with that thought for a moment? Because that is a hard thing to do. I can super relate to how hard that is, especially Sue was talking about in the blue. But when we start to feel threatened and activated, whether it's because we feel like we've hurt somebody or we've done something wrong, we get revved up and we get pressure filled, and leaving space is hard. But when we leave space for the other person, we leave room for their body to have curiosity and openness. And if we don't leave space and we rush to our self-righteousness, then we're shutting down the possibilities of that system. And that is hard. I could really relate to the whole self-righteousness. We had a conversation about, Pam, you asked me one time, when has it been really hard for you to maintain your green? Or what did you realize in this process? And I thought really hard. And first what came to me is our self-righteous kids that shame us all the time for getting it wrong. That was the first. But then that was about them more, and I have learned a lot about my process. But what really came to mind is when I was so self-righteous and I realized how much I was part of the problem about 2016, when I'm screaming and yelling and shaming everybody who believed different than me, because if they could believe that, it means this. And what's so powerful about that is I'm being activated, and we talk about the amygdala hijack, right? There are individuals that can fall so deeply disconnected in the blue. Like, we all go into the blue and red. This is not pathology. This is just defense. However, if we get too far along that continuum, if you look at that and we get real far out and it gets entrenched, we can visit anywhere. See, that map moves. And the more secure we build and the more security we promote, the more we all can move to the part where Sue described the green, with openness towards one another and tolerance for differences. But if we go so far out and we're entrenched, we can be very activating, either consciously, right? Because if I can scare everybody and make them afraid and make them angry, guess where we live on that spectrum? Every one of us. If we are activated, we will all spread out on the end of that spectrum, and we will shut down. Our brain will be rigid. Every part of our brain that's activated, that close to hope and to optimism, shuts down, and all we do is defend and protect. And we think that's what's been happening. We've had an amygdala hijack, and that it is time. Culturally, yeah. And part of what's been so meaningful to be in these conversations about this and how you're applying it out there is really literally is like, we have a lot of agency and we need hope. Hope is not a fly-by-night feeling. It's a hard one and we need it.
It's a emotion of activism.
Yeah. If we don't have it, we won't try. We'll just get complacent.
Because it's easy to know what you're mad at. When we are activated, almost the attention is always like, they did that. It's outside. They did this and he didn't call and she didn't. It just, that's how it sounds, right? But what that does is it makes us unsafe. And so this idea of a pause, and I love your word curiosity. If you're in a state of curiosity, you're probably pretty solid in the green. You can have big feelings in the green. You can have real big feelings in the green. Again, this isn't about niceness. If we could just describe that for a minute, it's like feeling the feeling, just like Pam was describing, knowing what's happening in her body, even being able to place herself on the continuum as bright violet or whatever, but then being able to contain and engage in a way that she's choosing. Dan Siegel talks about integration. So it's a right brain, left brain integration. It's a body mind integration. But the one that's easiest to understand is that it's like, I can be upset with you over there, somebody, and it becomes all about you. Now I've lost myself. Or I can like be so consumed with my feelings, I've lost my listener. And I'm indexing too much in here. So what security looks like is I can feel my feelings, but I can also feel the other person. I'm aware of my impact on the other person. I care. When I go blue, so in our relationship, I'm recovering blue person for sure, in process. But when I'm in that direction, I don't know that I'm in there because it feels good, right? I'm just like,
she will say that all. She's like, if I'm going to pick one, pick blue. It feels so good. I'm right.
It's just like, it's fine. Everything's fine. What's the problem?
Deflection.
Exactly.
I like
talk
it.
to the hand.
Yeah. But what's missing is my heart, right? How you can tell that you've gone a little too far over is you don't have that, like, oh my God, my partner is like actually really upset. And I'm just going like, whatever, that's a sign.
Let me tell you about another learning event that Sue and I are involved in. So we were recently featured as speakers at the Holistic Attachment Summit. This is an amazing online event, and it's free. We love that. It's for mental health professionals and includes 30 world-leading pioneers who are sharing the latest cutting-edge strategies and frameworks that are centered on healing attachment and developmental trauma. So it's such an honor to be included in this summit. It really is. We're speaking alongside of Pat Ogden, Bonnie Badenoch, Linda Ty, David Elliott, Richard Swartz, and so many more. It's a powerful learning opportunity, and tickets are free for the live event. The summit takes place October 28th through November 1st, 2024. So if you're interested, go to our website at therapistuncensored.com/events and click on the Holistic Attachment Summit. And you can also find it in our show notes. All right, let's jump back in. Hey, let's take a break and thank our sponsor, OneSkin. I continue to use OneSkin regularly on my face and body. I love having them as a sponsor. As I mentioned before, they make my life easier. And especially because my skin feels so much more healthy. All I have to do is cleanse and then apply OneSkin to my face and my neck and my body a couple of times a day. And I can see and feel the impact almost immediately, especially on my face. It just feels more nourished, looks more healthy. And another thing that I love about OneSkin is that it's founded by the all-women team of scientists that has been very data-focused. They use cutting-edge science for optimizing skin biology, improving skin health markers. I like the confidence that it gives me, that it's science-backed. So give it a try. I think you will really love it. Get started today with 15% off using code TU at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code TU. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them TU sent you.
And I'm also thinking about this idea of shame. And I'm curious from either of you about how shame plays into any of this.
Well, I would just say that I have never had an experience where learning occurred and shame was present, ever. Kids, adults, corporate, faith-based, never. So I think that we carry a lot of shame for all the things that we named and the conditioning that we had or didn't have as kids. We carry that and it manifests itself in these ways. Oftentimes we don't even realize that's what it is, but it becomes a driver and a catalyst to those other behaviors. And so you really have to wrangle. I think I was telling y'all the other day that my inner critic, I named her Paula. She's the shame carrier.
That's a great technique, by the way. I love it.
So I had to name her and be able to call her down. And it always shows up, like I'll go to do a training, and by the time I get to my car, I'm like, there she is. And I've had to like, Paula, shut up, because she comes into the space, and it's that she's a shame carrier. And so what's been interesting even about this book is, in this material, Paula is showing up less and less. She hasn't really come around much lately, But I definitely think that when you talk about like, how do you apply it? How do you sit in it? We were, in a program, I'm going to take you to this part. We were in a program together the other week, and something happened that was counter to what was planned, right? And so you get to know people really quickly when you're under some heat lamps on a stage and something happens. And I wish there was back reel on like what was going on. So I'm sitting up there kind of like, I'm not going to be the angry black woman. I'm just going to sit here.
And we're going, we're not going to be the angry women interrupting.
A controlling person.
But it kind of was this like tsunami of like all the things, and nobody said anything and let it pass. And the very thing that we were talking about happened during the program. So we get done with it. We hug it out. We take our group pictures. We finish our lobster rolls and mimosas and pack it on up. And then about less than 24 hours later, the group text is like, okay, I just have to name this thing. And what came out of that was, I don't know if there was a fear before sending it.
Oh man, I was terrified.
But as soon as
y'all didn't respond right away.
We didn't,
so
because
I was just like,
I was
man, you haven't responded either.
I was holding my breath, like, finally. And so I'm like trying to figure out what to say. And I'm like, exactly.
Yeah.
Spot on.
And it was a risk for her to say
100%.
it.
But what a learning opportunity.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It didn't come with shame. It didn't come with guilt. It came with, what a beautiful opportunity. Instead of sitting with that was an obstacle, it was like, man, we just learned a lot about ourselves. I was sweating in front of people, in the front of the audience. Like, what do I do? Do I throat punch this person and get the mic? Like, I was having a whole
right.
thing.
And just for context, so basically, a white man holding mic.
I'm over here with my anxiety going, oh no, they're going to hear this.
No, white man holding, no, this is what happened. White man holding mic, two women that were equal to him presenting the thing, and he forgets to give them the mic and to let them be part of the introduction. It was hard, and we love all of these people. So what we've been examining is for each of us what stopped us from just simply saying, oh, hey, wait, this person has something to say. Loretta Ross is she's on the podcast. She talks a lot about calling in versus calling out. And so again, getting back to this idea of like, how can we give you guys some really concrete skills?
Yeah. Yeah, the calling, I kind of referenced it earlier about being challenged by our 20-year-old kids. I'm sure anyone with children has never experienced that, but where
we don't recycle right.
Yeah.
Our politics aren't right.
And honestly, like every generation is supposed to do that, right? Like help the next generation. But I think what's so challenging, and I love the way you put that, Pam, and it's like, we don't learn when we're in shame. But oftentimes we shame
when we're in shame.
If we're using shame, if anyone is using shame, they are activated. And when Pam is saying that she's put down her inner critic, because if we can start realizing we're using shame, but it's because we're activated, not because we're asses, it's like, oh. And so that's the self-awareness part, right? And so when I was talking about the self-righteousness, like, I could be activated by my own stuff, my own privilege that I want to acknowledge. And I think with our kids, sometimes they have these privileges they can't cope with, and they have shame about it. So if they can shame us, I use this in therapy a lot. Sometimes when we're trying to get rid of something, we throw it up on someone else and we feel so much better, right? And then the other person's going, what just happened? And now they're holding it. That's what we do with shame.
I think that example that Pam gave earlier about when we as dominant white culture kind of gets a little bit of a baby clue, and then we over-index and over-activate, that's also a shame piece. Yeah. That out of my activation of shame, I'm going to show you that I'm doing it right.
An extreme discomfort to be able to name, I'm not racist. Let's just call it.
Right, yeah, right? Exactly.
That's what that is. So it's like I have to over-perform and over-index in that space to prove that. But we also have the societal norms of either or, good or bad, right or wrong, that perpetuate that too. So it's like you got to pick versus, this idea of holding the tension. Like this book has been a gift because it's like, the gift of holding the tension of those things that contradict, that can both be true. Like, how do I then sit with that and really become secure in that I actually don't have to have all the answers, that I don't have to speak the Queen's English and stick the landing on every answer, that I can actually say I need some more time to think about that. Like, that has been a gift of the book. So when I talk about remaining in the green zone, it's a conscious choice every time something occurs. Like, you know what, I'm gonna sit in the green zone on that. Like, my ears are hot and I'm about to come across this table. However, the intention of that and the impact of that is not what I want to do. I'm out of myself. So, right, when you experience people that you're mad with, you got an opportunity for them to not take you out of yourself. Like, I don't like to live out. That's disorienting for me when I get to that level. There's a lot of energy that takes. And so when I make jokes about staying in the green zone, like, I'm serious about it, because there is a safety there, and that safety doesn't require me to have all the answers, to be perfect. People think that the green zone means you're not going to offend people, whatever. I think we've stopped short of having real conversations because we're afraid of offending. And when I don't do that, I miss out on the opportunity to know you better and know you better. On the other side of that offensive moment is clarity and usually better connection, but we stop. So then I walk away going, like at that event, I walk away going, well, whatever. You blew the lid off it when you're like, I'm just gonna drop this here. I was like, she has dropped us in hot grease. Let's go. Let's get it, right?
It felt like hot grease too.
No, literally hot grease. I read that, I was like, oh gosh. But do I know you better now?
Yeah, but I was like, I don't know these people that well, so I don't know how this is going to go. But I just got to name it.
But will we activate differently the next time that happens?
Yeah.
I think we built the playbook right there.
Totally.
Because we were willing to have the hard conversation and take the risk. And really, after you did it, it returned me. I left out of the safe zone, and your courage returned me to the green.
I love that. Yeah.
Amazing. I love it. Well, and one other thank you for that. I'm like, get weird, but I get a little activated. But also, we're talking a lot about the book, and I just want to be super clear that, like, I think it's just landing because you read the book. But the idea here is that you don't have to read the book, or it's not about the book. It's about the material.
It's about the science.
It's about the science. What?
You have to read the book.
No. It's about the science. The science is out there, and I think everybody's journey to a secure zone is really individual and different. And what we're trying to do is push everybody to say, no, we're all part of this. Everybody. And there's nobody pure. Nobody's got it all together. And if we can all join together as a community and work together to be honest and humble and support each other in learning the kinds of things that you were talking about what's my fingerprint that just gets me, and what can I do about that, and why that is, so I can, Paula has a job to protect you. So it's like loving these parts of us. So why don't you make a point, and you make a point,
we're aware of the time,
right?
Because
we want to open it up, but I want y'all to say what you want to say.
What do you have to say, Pam?
Well, I was just thinking about, and I know they're so humble about don't read the book. I'm sorry. Read the book. And I will say the reason why that becomes so important. So a couple of days ago, my daughter's getting ready to go to college. A couple of days ago, I'll be quick. She sat her father and I down, he's upstairs, and said, Mom and Dad, I don't think you're living up to your potential. And we were so thrown I said, what did you say? That's not good when a mom says that, right? When I asked you to repeat it, I heard you. I'm trying to not activate. And I said, oh, tell me more. And she went into talking about I don't know if you're really living up to your potential, and you and Dad are doing okay, but I mean, and I just said, I am in receipt of that feedback, because I recognize that's her. She's scared, anxious about going to college. She's got to throw it somewhere. She's worried about getting into her favorite school. She only wants to apply to one. Like, all these things are happening. Prior to secure relating, y'all would have been posting bail money. Period. I made it through that conversation. She walks away, and my husband Arlen goes, she doesn't realize that book just saved her life. She has no idea that book, right? Because I was able to just stop. I see where you are. I'm going to stay here. I hear the first piece, but those deeper pieces are anxiety, fear, not feeling adequate. I'm not going to match that with anxiety and fear and making you feel inadequate. So I think, at the end of the day, part of the beauty of the science is to own and say we all have those things. Unconscious bias, we have those things. And this book is a playbook on it's not about having those things and carrying guilt about that. It's we have those things. And I'm learning with this material that I get to make a choice about what comes after the comma of those interactions. And that is power and empowering, and it's really peace at the end of the day.
I think that's a mic drop.
It's a master class, actually. So the comma, the pause, and then also the tell me more is a great one to put in your pocket, because tell me more gives you time, but also you are interested because it's not the first thing. Like you're saying, there were layers, and you can't get to those layers if you're like, that's not respectful or whatever it is. It's and it really, literally, as a therapist, sometimes I'm just like, stay in my seat. like there's certain little anchors that can ground us. And tell me more is one I want everybody to leave with. And then when somebody keeps going and then what else? Help the person that's upset tell you all about it. You're not there to fix it. You're there to just listen. And honestly, I can almost guarantee you, 90% of what they're saying is going to be resolved, a whole bunch of it, if you're still standing and still listening, and you're saying, thank you so much for talking to me, and thank you for telling me, and is there more? You know what I mean? And you'll get a chance to defend yourself, but not then, right? They're upset and they're telling you. So that's a masterclass in just one of those really take home, really transformative skills.
Because when your nervous system, it really only takes around 60 to 90 seconds to cool down that nervous activation.
Yeah, a feeling is just that, right? Short.
And what keeps it going is the story we tell ourselves about that. So if Pam was activated by shame, which she might have been, oh my God, did I not do enough? Did they see something? When your child says that, man, right? It's a punch. But
or I could have never said that to my mother. Or,
how dare you? All I do for you. I mean, it's super easy to get self-righteous or to get very anxious, but 60 to 90 seconds is all it takes. The power of the pause. 60 to 90 seconds in the scientific way. This is why we talk a lot about scientific interventions, not just feel-good ones. Your body can calm. And the last thing I'll add is the power of the and. That is one of the most important things I work with couples. We are stuck in a society of buts, and our brain cuts off when somebody says something and follows it by a but. You hear nothing but Charlie Brown's teacher afterwards. So the power of the and you did the and, Pam, because what you did is...
Barely.
Barely. But there was, and she's going through something too. It's not all about me. And she has an experience of, it's the... this pisses me off and da-da-da-da-da-da. And she's having an experience. The minute we're able to add the and, we add from a meta level, we come out and we go back more into that part of our brain that can be in the green. Let's take questions.
Yeah, and while we're moving the mic around, the other piece is the for. Rather than, it's very easy to be upset about the thing over there. But if you think, what are you for? What is getting you activated? What is it that you want? What is your ask? That's another way of moving your swimming to the green. Is if I'm upset about something, it's what is it that I want? I want a close relationship with my child. I want my child to be responsible. Whatever. That is another cool off. So, are there any challenges, comments, questions?
You can heckle, actually. Okay,
yeah.
Alex, over there.
Thank you, Ann, Sue, and Pam, for this amazing conversation. I wish it was more time that we could dive more into, as far as Pam, when it comes to your activism, being someone who's in the community and what that looks like and having to defend yourself, essentially. I did have a question, and I love how you mentioned radical awareness and taking the time to be able to do that and having the space to be able to do that. My question was, can the green zone allude to you repressing your emotions? And then I put, after that, before you even said it, I was like, the angry black woman, ?
How much time do we have? No. And we're in community together, so I'm laughing. I'll be at your couch later to finish this off. No, I have had to battle with that. You know, on any given day, I am indicted and or questioned on a variety of things. Like, I am questioned on my blackness almost every day in this community on some level as a leader in the community. Too black, not black enough, apply black there, conditionally black, whatever. And when you think about the repressing of emotions, what I would say to you is I don't repress, but I do calibrate. So people assume that if you're in the green, you don't ever go back around to have that conversation. That's actually not true. I am really strategic about when I have that conversation. So a couple months ago, we were in a community meeting and a woman stood up and really came at me and attacked me. And at the time, I did not engage in that way because I didn't think that was a community project meeting. That was a one-on-one over coffee approach. So at the time, people probably perceive like she didn't even stand up for herself. I absolutely did. There was a call right after, and it was hey, I want to sit down with you in shared space in a quiet setting to really explore what I'm hearing. And what I always seem to learn from that experience is whatever that output is, whatever that outward manifestation is or projection, oftentimes it's despair. It's not being heard. It's being invisible. So I don't ever repress. Ask my husband, baby, no. Sometimes it's, but we think that coming back to the green is a breaststroke. Sometimes it's a crawl on your elbows. Sometimes it's a grip, back to the middle. But I don't repress. I think repression is a whole other thing, and you actually become what you're trying to repress because you can't hold it anymore. So there's always an outlet for it. But this book has really given me the glossary of terms to name it. So people think being strategic about how you do it is some kind of trickery. Strategic is empowering. Like, I'm not going to do it now. Like, I'm not going to match a call out with a call out, but it doesn't mean I'm not going back around the bend to get it. And sometimes I don't call out because I am not regulated enough to do it without causing harm. So I believe in whatever is coming at me, I will never be a person that does not preserve your dignity, even if you've attacked mine, because that's not who I am. So I don't repress, but I will strategically figure out how to come back to it, because I think it's dangerous not to come back to it. That unchecked harms them and harms the community. So I'm always coming back to it. And I don't care who it is. It could be, a guy that does it. It could be a millennial. I'm equal opportunity on that. Like, if it goes there, I'm going to pick it up, but I'm going to be thoughtful and mindful about how I do it.
Awesome. You guys, we are sitting in the presence of greatness.
Very grateful.
I just feel so, so honored that you are sharing.
They're laughing.
That you're sharing your wisdom. Like, this is a very generous thing to do. It is actually very generous.
Oh.
Pam, you and I have talked one-on-one and in small groups about how to re-navigate into the green in discussions around equity where there may be multiple different voices and multiple different perspectives in a room. But we've been talking a lot about kind of one-on-one connectedness. And I want to take it to a higher level. In the state of Texas right now, where DEI is a cuss word, is literally been legislated against. How is it that as a member of our society in which that is the case, we can try to navigate to the green? And that was an easy question. I'm just sorry to throw you a softball there.
That's Susan Dawson, one of the best leaders to ever lead, let me just say, one of the best. What I would say is, yeah, especially in Texas right now, it's challenging, but really it's just an ecosystem of a bigger thing happening in the world. And so the reason why I continue to be kind of unscathed by that kickback and it being a cuss word is, I think sometimes the labels that we use end up limiting ourselves. And so when I come into space to talk about DEI and DEIB, you don't ever actually hear me say that word. What I say is, talk to me about the culture of your family or your nonprofit or your organization or your church. I never lead with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging because it already carries a weight to it that disorients people and makes them already feel like, I got to do this DEIB thing. So it commodifies it in a way that I don't think is helpful. So where my entry point is always on the larger scale. When you talk about like, how do you bring it in the big piece? It's like, what are our cultural norms? We all have them. So you start in your family, you have cultural norms. And I talk about this in a lot in my classes. It's like, what are your cultural norms in your family? You have some people like, we don't have any. And usually white people are like, we don't have any. Sure you do. Bring the wrong side dish to 4th of July and see what happens. Right? So when I get people thinking about like your cultural norms, you have them, and then you grow up and you bring them into your neighborhoods, and then you bring them into the workplace. And when those cultural norms are different with your coworkers, then it pops off. It's like, why would you do it like that? That's not how we do it. So it gives us an opportunity to condition ourselves around like people have different cultural norms. It doesn't make them good or bad. And so when we remove this idea of like we've got to do the DEI and the B, and we replace it with what is the cultural norms and our core values associated in our belief system around those things, it opens up a world for those things to exist and not collide, right? So instead of being so uptight about those things, simply saying they weren't aware of the cultural norms. They didn't know the cultural norms. That's something that you can be exposed to versus they are racist and they're doing this and they're doing that. Clearly there are racist people in the world, absolutely. But I don't believe anybody wakes up and says, I need to be racist today, let's go. Let me give a heaping dose of discrimination at the coffee shop. Nobody's doing that. It's those unconscious conditioning pieces. So that's why this material becomes important. Like what triggers you in a room, Susan, won't trigger me in a room. Right? We come to talk about it. I'm like, that one wasn't the one that bothered me. When he called me sweetie, I almost set it off. Like what's going to trigger us is different. And so instead of diminishing what triggers, saying, oh my gosh, I didn't catch that one. Thanks for having the courage to tell me that your conditioning around that cultural norm doesn't work. And so we should use that as a superpower. You know the cultural norms in your workplaces. You know why do we act like those aren't happening? There's like the HR handbook, but then there's the handbook that talks about don't put that kind of coffee in there, right? We don't talk enough about those. We should be bringing those in and celebrating those versus making those something to be ashamed of. So the bigger, to me, discussion is how do we hold those things and let people be in those spaces as long as it's not countercultural to the organizational culture, right? People are afraid, inclusion, people are afraid to say what you are not, and naming that is life-giving. Hey, we do these things over here, we don't do these things over here. It might not be the place for you because we don't do that high-performance burnout crap. So we're scared to say that, but it's actually liberating for people to actually know what those things are.
Let's say that there's somebody in your life that you have tried to empathize with and try to understand and have received that from them as well in moments, but ultimately this person is maybe not safe for you, or maybe you're not safe for that person. How in the secure relating and the green and the blue and the red, how do you figure out your boundaries or your lines of when do I maybe need to not connect with this person anymore? Like, is that something that also could be healthy? Like, do we always need to understand, or is there sometimes where we need to go, actually, I'm kind of done?
Yeah.
Okay.
Think you have your answer.
Quinn, is an awesome question and you brought the word in that I was rolling around in my mind as you were speaking, and the word is boundaries. We use from triggers to boundaries. And in the title of this dialogue, boundaries are not walls, they're not cutoffs. They're clarity. Boundaries have clarity. And when we have clarity, and being in the green zone is aware of self and aware of other. And if you become aware that something in this relationship is unhealthy for you and very, very activating, and you've been in there and you've tried, boundaries and clarity is a really important. And that's different than cutting somebody off through shame and like, I've got to disconnect because it's like, this is not good for me. And I'm not sure it's good for you.
I love what you're saying because it's not an action.
Yeah.
You're not worried about what action you're going to take. But by being in that clarity, you can feel your loneliness, or you can feel the pain of the disconnect. Like you're getting a lot more information than when we are moving and trying and figuring it out and then again, that just amplifies the clarity tremendously.
Yeah, feeling that experience, being able to get out of the stirring enough to get centered, that's when we feel our senses. When we're out on these things, like when you're there and you can feel it. I love what you just said, Sue. You can feel the loneliness and disconnect, and you get really aware of that. That's a powerful thing to tune into. A lot of times we don't recognize it.
Then you're taking better care. Like to me, the green zone is you just continue to take a little better care of yourself, and that changes a dance. It really changes a dance.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having this event. It's been amazing to be here and participate. But through the conversation, some thoughts that came up for me were the generational trauma that might be existing in your families. I was raised by an immigrant who immigrated here in 1965, and then also someone who was younger but came from a white family, and the two clashed in a way of, I feel like, very far in the spectrum from dismissive to overreactive in a way. So my question was like the spectrum of green being different at different stages of life and finding that. I guess it's not totally a question, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean that's brilliance. I love what you just said because these things do change developmentally over time. And I love this intersection that you're describing, that traditional psychology has left that out. And unfortunately, then we're sitting in front of an individual person that's, say, depressed, for example, and then we're both looking at why are you depressed? And we're missing exactly what you're pointing out about one parent's culture all the way back and what that brings, and then the other parent's culture. And so the main thing is just like widening the lens in and of itself is healing. So community becomes not just looking at the community as it perpetuates injustice, but it's also looking at this community and how we can change the world. And this idea of secure relating, we hope that if every single person, we don't know what your lives are like, but if everybody kind of knows a thing that they can do to like do a little bit more work, a little bit more introspection, holding somebody that you might need to hold accountable, whatever it looks like in your life, that Anna and I talk about creating little ripples of security all over. And that little ripple, because as I get safer, you get safer. And by you being safer and me being safer, it brings out the best in both of us. And then we amplify that and amplify that and amplify that. And that is super powerful. So thank you for that. We've got to stop for today. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
And I'm going to say one thing before we end. Thank you so much for joining us. If this material brings meaning to you, please pass it on to somebody that could gain from it. We love and really appreciate the reviews because it helps people find us. So we appreciate all of our audience joining us today. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you around the bend.
Therapist Uncensored is Ann Kelly and Sue Marriott. This podcast is edited by Jack Anderson.